You know, Wind Waker is one of the most beloved Zelda games in the 3D Zelda era. I mean, what's not to like? It's colorful, especially with the HD flare nowadays, the story is great, and it has a bigger open world than Ocarina of Time. But as every Zelda fan knows, this was not the case when it was first revealed to the public in 2001. That's why today, in celebration for Tetra, the King of Red Lions, Toon Link, and the Wind Waker stages in Hyrule Warriors Legends, we're gonna talk about the beta of The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Oh, just as a heads up for anyone who's wondering about the Wind Waker HD remake on the Wii U, almost everything that was scrapped in the original is still left within the HD remake except with some higher resolution graphics thanks to the HD upgrade. In fact, there's only one thing that they used in the HD port that was scrapped in the original, but I'll get to that later. Now before we start off with any beta footage or anything related to Wind Waker, I need to address the Zelda footage that appeared during the GameCube's tech demo during Space World 2000. Because of this tech demo, many people thought that the next Zelda game was going to be more dark and more epic than Ocarina of Time, which did happen thanks to Twilight Princess, but that game wouldn't get released until 6 years after the tech demo. Miyamoto himself said in a press conference that the tech demo was just an experiment after Majora's Mask. Quote, "The reason we were able to show you the more realistic looking Zelda battle at Space World 2000 was because we had been doing some preliminary experiments with the console prior to completing Majora's Mask. That's why the video existed. It wasn't until afterward that we began working with the director and the programmers to go ahead and create Wind Waker." End quote. The next year, Zelda fans got a first look at the actual Wind Waker in Space World 2001. A lot of the fans would hate the look due to it being cel-shaded, thinking that the next Zelda installment would have a more kid-friendly story. But that's enough of the history. Let's take a look at that Space World footage. The first thing that might have caught your eye was that Link seems to be sneaking around instead of, well, stabbing moblins with his sword. Although there is a sneaking function in the actual game, that required a barrel to hide in. Possibly, instead of a barrel, Link was gonna have a sneaking function that I believe would have been better than hiding inside of a barrel. The other thing that you might have also taken notice was the button layout here. As you can see, the button for attack is on the A button, when in the actual game, it's the B button. These buttons wouldn't change position until very late into development. Why? I have no idea. One last interesting thing to note is that in the footage, Link's tunic color is a different color. This design seems to be based off the original Legend of Zelda design of Link. This design wouldn't be totally abandoned though, as strange enough, if you recognize this design even before I mentioned the original Legend of Zelda design, Toon Link would wear this same design as an alternate color in Super Smash Bros. Brawl and Wii U/3DS. At E3 2002, Wind Waker was shown again, looking more like the game we know today. The only thing that hasn't changed between the two E3s was the button layouts, obviously. Now, onto stuff that's actually in the game. There are many various things left in Wind Waker that aren't used in the actual game. Too many in fact that I'm gonna skip most of them, except for the interesting ones because let's face it, you don't want to learn about the debug menu or early title cards like this one for the Kingdom of Hyrule. How about we start off with unused models? Let's start off with something weird. Here's a ball with a face on it. Whose face? Well, I don't know, one of the developers maybe? But I can tell you that it was most likely used as a test sphere. This Poe enemy here looks very early. Most of his textures are missing and the only texture that's left is on its face, which is also used on its hands for some reason. Speaking of early stuff, recognize this? Yeah, it's the chandelier from the Space World 2001 trailer. Unfortunately, the chandelier only has 2 animation files and no collision detection files at all. What does that mean? Well, basically, it was only meant to be animated in that trailer alone and can't be used in-game. The animation of Link swimming here is actually used in-game. However, because the water in the game is opaque, or in other words, not see-through, you can never see this animation except in this test room. Let's move on to unused graphics, shall we? First up, unused icons. These icons here were originally going to place your sword icon with the weapon you picked up from an enemy. So, if you picked up, say, a Boko stick from an enemy, your icon would have originally changed into a Boko stick icon. This icon over here says in English, water boots, and trying to use them makes Link jump as if he was changing boots. As for the reason or purpose of the water boots, well, I have a theory about that, but we'll get to that later. This icon is known as the Wind Waker Stone. Unlike the previous icon, the only thing that remains of the Wind Waker Stone is its icon. So, who knows what this thing would have been used for. Within the same file folder as the Wind Waker Stone icon are 2 extra sail icons for sails along with the regular sail icon used in-game. One icon is named Tinkle Sail, while the other is named the Zora Sail. We do know that it is possible that the Zora Sail became the Swift Sail in the HD version, as the Swift Sail does allow you to sail faster than normal while Zoras are known in the universe for their fast swimming. As for the Tinkle Sail, well, first off, anything that the game internally refers to as Tinkle, they are mentioning Tingle. So, perhaps the Tinkle Sail might have been used to get a lot of rupees while sailing or something like that. Let's move on to unused test rooms and maps. There are a lot of test rooms, and I mean a lot of test rooms. Instead of me talking about them all, I've decided to show you guys the most interesting ones, at least to me. Since we're talking about Tingle, can you figure out whose room this is? What's strange about this room are 2 things. First, the painting on the wall to your left is a painting of a green boy with a fairy, or in other words, young Link from Majora's Mask. Second, the table, when touched by Link, acts as if Link fell into lava as he is booted outside of the room to Tingle Island. I think what was meant to happen here was a cutscene and then you would be booted outside. The next test room might seem very strange as the textures on the walls and floors seem to come right out of Twilight Princess and don't reflect the rest of the game's textures. Although this might be a stretch, I believe this might be the Space World 2000 trailer room, or at the very least, a really early concept of that. This other early test map is named the Forest of Fairies. This place is very early as it is the place where Link is fighting some mountains as well as looking up at those glowing particles shown in the trailer I showed before. Funny thing is that the early test map has the same layout of the place where Tetra is dropped by the Helmera King in the actual game. This terrain test map is not anything noteworthy. I mean, it was just used to test terrain except for one little thing. There's a little slope going down from the land to the bottom of this pool here. Since I mentioned the water boots, this was probably where it was tested because no boots that Link wears in the game sinks him down into the water. In the Wind Waker section of the Hyrule Historia are some concept art of unused islands. First of which is Stovepipe Island. This might have been an early design or an early concept of Dragon Roost Island in the actual game. Second is the GC Island. Guess what GC stands for? I will say that the concept won't go totally unused as the official sequel to Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass, has an island with the same concept, DS Island. Since we're on the topic of concept art, here is a concept art of what appears to be adult Wind Waker Link. It seemed like throughout the adventure Link would have actually grown up, and I gotta say, I kind of wish that was actually implemented in the final product. Zelda/Tetra had some radical designs during development, including this one which looks like an Arabian kind of style, and this other one which looks closer to the final design except Tetra looks more, how should I say, piratey or adventurous, and Zelda looks a bit more plain and simple compared to her design in Wind Waker. The next thing that I'm about to talk about is, well, a theory. A theory about the worst thing that I think we might have lost due to possibly either not enough memory on the GameCube disc or hardware constraints. And that is the ability to explore more than Hyrule Castle and Ganon's Castle. I'm talking about the entirety of Hyrule underwater. Okay, I'm not saying this was something that was definitely scrapped, this is just my idea. Why would I think this? Well, 4 different things, 3 of which were left in the game while 1 is a concept art. You see, outside of Hyrule Castle, far off from the main path, is a tiny hole within the mountainside that seems to be a cave entrance. Next is some low-resolution graphics that are found outside of Hyrule Castle that seem to be steps and what appear to be doorways, even though you can't really go through them. There's also a model of Fado, the Kokiri Wind Sage, located within the files for the cutscene when Tetra and Link head to underwater Hyrule. Next is the concept art, which is probably the biggest defender of this theory. Within Hyrule Historia, next to the concept art for the islands, there's an art that represents the concept of a fishing hook item. According to the concept art, this fishing hook, when used, would bring Link back up to the surface via this fisherman who's just trying to catch fish. Now, ask yourself this question. Why would Link need this item when there's no need for it? I mean, you can't go anywhere but Hyrule Castle, the path to Ganon's Castle, and Ganon's Castle itself, which by the way, the only place that's open is the very top, and that's the boss fight with Ganon. The only solution I came up with, coupled with the fact that those scrapped water boots were supposedly used to sink underwater, is that originally, you were going to be able to go around underwater Hyrule freely. And I just had another thought. Maybe there were 3 dungeons that would also act somewhat like in A Link to the Past, where you would travel to the Dark World to save the maidens, and Underwater Hyrule is A Link to the Past's Dark World for Wind Waker. That would also explain the Fido model as well, because you would have seen the original temple and his spirit might have appeared there. But that's just speculation on my part. Back to beta stuff. Last on the list is unused sound effects and music. This first track might sound familiar to people who have played past Legend of Zelda games. This 30-second fanfare is named E3 title theme, and was obviously used during the E3 demo, and the intro is ripped right out of A Link to the Past, except with some actual instruments compared to, well, A Link to the Past. These next 2 sound effects were going to be used with Jaboon, the giant water spirit fish. The first one sounds like Jaboon is laughing, and it was probably going to be used when he appeared to Link. Now this one sounds interesting. Doesn't it sound like Jaboon is in pain? Well, in the actual game, Ganondorf tries to kill Jaboon, but he escapes and is uninjured. Maybe Jaboon was supposed to be injured or perhaps even killed due to earlier story elements. And that was the beta of The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. The only 2 things that I really do wish would happen is the possibility to explore Underwater Hyrule and Link growing up as the game went along. But I digress. The game is still fantastic without those 2, and I still deem it as my favorite Zelda game of all time. If you would like to know about the rest of the unused test rooms, textures, or models that I didn't talk about, as well as Nintendo's early press conference about The Wind Waker, click the links in the description. I'm NinFan237, and I'll see you guys next time.